Hello and welcome to a new Leela game from chess.com CCC 9 event. This time she's playing black against Xiphos, and they started out with a Sicilian. And here after knight f3 we have g6, the Hyperaccelerated Dragon, where black wants to fianchetto this bishop very quickly. But now after d4, instead of c takes on d4, we have bishop g7, and this allows white now to play d5 and get into this Benoni-like structure. The game continued now with knight f6 and bishop d3. If white plays here e5, well, this is a bit premature, because black has knight g4 and white pretty much loses this pawn on e5. Or he can maybe hang on to it with queen e2, but this is very ugly. It's blocking in this bishop. And the idea is to play now h3 and drive this knight to an ugly square. But black can play here d6 and make sure that the knight can go to e5. And now after e takes and queen d6, black is doing fine here. This bishop is pretty good. And black is preparing to play e6 and put pressure on d5. Black is doing fine. But in the game, after knight f6, Xiphos here played bishop d3, and now we have castles, c4, and now d6, securing the e5 square, making sure that this knight can remain on f6, and also allowing this bishop to come out. And here Xiphos immediately played h3, pretty much stopping the bishop out idea. And in this position, Lila now played b5, the banker gambit-like idea of giving up a pawn for activity. And here Xiphos took the pawn, and now after a6, he declined the second pawn with b6. If this pawn takes, then after knight a6, black gets a lot of activity. This knight can go to b4 and attack d3 and put pressure on d5. And black has ideas like e6 and attacking white's center. But here after a6 and b6, Lila immediately attacked the white center with e6. And in this position, probably best for white is just quite simply take on e6. And after black recaptures with the f-pawn or the bishop, the game is pretty much even. They both have their chances. Other moves are less satisfactory for white. For example, if he would castle here, then black can take here on d5, and this pawn on d5 is pretty weak. Not because the knight can take it, because this would lose a piece after bishop e4. Either the knight or the rook is gone. But before taking that pawn, black can build pressure first on d5 with moves like knight d7 and bishop b7, and this knight then goes to b6, and black will take on d5 only after he built a lot of pressure on d5, and he can also maintain a piece on that square. But after e6, Xiphos saw the possibility of winning a piece, and he couldn't resist the temptation. He played queen b3, and he's quite simply threatening to play here b7 and win a piece. And who can blame him? I mean, if there would be a pawn to b1 here on b7, then he probably wouldn't do it with his king still in the center. But we're talking about a whole piece here, so it's very tempting. And Lila allowed him. She played here e takes on d5. And there's no turning back. Xiphos needs to continue with his plan, because if he would take here on d5, then after rook e8 check and bishop e3, Lila could play bishop b7 and threaten to take here on d5, and black would be much better. So Xiphos doesn't have a choice. After e takes on d5, he had to play b7, and now after bishop takes and queen takes, Lila played knight d7, defending this rook, and she's preparing to take here on e4 and win back his piece. And taking on d5 would be completely suicidal for Xiphos, because after rook e8 check and bishop e3, Lila would have here knight b6, attacking the d5 pawn with both knights, and threatening knight takes on d5, and then also threatening bishop takes on b2, winning this rook on a1. And this is only the start of it, because Lila would also threaten to trap the queen with rook e7, queen c6, and then rook c8. And the queen wouldn't have escape squares. So taking on d5 is pretty much out of the question. And it looks like that after knight d7, with the move knight c3, white can add adequate defense for the e4 pawn, but this is just an illusion because black has here rook b8. And after queen a6, rook b6, defending this pawn on d6, queen a4, pawn takes, knight takes, and bishop takes. Here comes the point, rook b4, attacking both the queen and the bishop, and queen c6 doesn't help here because the rook can still take thanks to the other rook, trapping the queen. And after something like bishop e3, there could come queen a5 check, and we can see that black regained her piece and also has a big initiative. So after knight b d7, d takes on e4 being a huge threat, winning back a piece with interest, Xiphos played here bishop e2 trying to save his pieces, but after rook e8, in view of this threat with knight b6 and rook e7 trapping the queen, Xiphos considered that best is to countersack this knight on f7, and he played knight g5, and after h6 he took on f7, and after king takes on f7, this knight now is pinned and it cannot go to b6. The game continued with knight c3, rook b8, queen takes on a6, rook b6, queen d3, and now d4. And the knight doesn't have many good options. For example, it cannot go to d5, because then after knight takes and pawn takes, Lila could play here c4 to unblock this pawn on d4, and after queen takes, there could come knight e5 with tempo on the queen, and after queen a4, there could come d3, basically winning this piece on e2. There's no time to save this piece, because after something like bishop e1, there could come knight f3 double check by rook and knight, and after king f1, rook e1 would be a very nice mate. So this is not possible. So after d4, Xiphos preferred to move the knight to a4, but now Lila attacks it again with rook b4. And here Xiphos played a3, basically inviting Lila to take on a4. But if the rook takes on a4, then with queen b3 check, the rook would be lost, so Lila would lose an exchange, but still, Lila went for it because there are huge upsides. After rook takes and queen takes, Lila played here d5, Xiphos takes the exchange, but now after rook e4, the white king is pretty much stuck in the center. It has to defend this bishop on e2. And that means that this rook on a1 doesn't play. So Xiphos quickly returned the queen to d1 to defend the bishop and allow castling, but Lila now played queen a5 check. And if Xiphos plays here bishop d2, then Lila has queen a6, still not allowing that queen to castle. And if the queen goes to f1, well, then there's d3, and after bishop f3, rook back somewhere, and this rook on a1 is still stuck. But after the check on a5 with the queen, Xiphos voluntarily played here king f1, and now Lila continued with c4, g3, and now we have d3. And these pawns are really advancing like a knife through butter. Bishop f3, rook back, king g2, and it looks like this rook is finally coming to life, but Lila now played knight e4, rook e1, the other knight to c5, rook b1, and knight b3, and Lila is an exchange down, but her positional advantage is pretty impressive. Xiphos is basically reduced on playing on the first three ranks. Here Xiphos took the knight, pawn takes, bishop e3, h5, rook f1, queen d5, h4, king g8, this king is going to h7, queen e1, rook b8, a4, and Lila is improving her position, rook g1, and finally in this position Lila played knight d4 with huge threats on f3, so the bishop had to take. And after bishop takes, they exchanged a couple of pieces, but the pressure on the white's position remained. These rooks on g1 and b1 are not really doing anything. The game continued now with a5, rook f7, rook g2, queen f5, and after king g1, in this position Lila would like to play e3 and then take on f2 with check and then promote. But playing e3 now would just quite simply drop the e-pawn, so Lila came up with a very ingenious way of making the whole thing work. She played here d2, basically forcing the queen to take on d2 and leave this rook on b1 unguarded. And now e3 works because now the queen is attacking this rook and Lila is also threatening e takes on f2 with check. The queen had to go back and now check. And taking here with the rook just quite simply leads to mate. After bishop takes on f2, king f1, queen d3 check, king g2, queen takes on g3 check, king f1, queen h3 check, and now after king e2 finally queen d3 mate. So this is not an option. After e takes on f2, Xiphos played king h2, but now Lila promotes, and after queen takes, rook takes, and rook takes, she's basically a bishop up. Xiphos continues here with rook d2, bishop back, and now they exchange a pair of pawns, after which Lila goes behind the b pawn, and if this pawn moves forward then it's lost. So, and Lila can pretty much force it to move by attacking it with the bishop, so Xiphos doesn't bother defending it, but now Xiphos drops also the other pawns, and being up a bishop and two pawns is really easy now. And after 20 something more moves, finally in this position Lila mates Xiphos. Please subscribe, like and share, and check out some of the other videos, you might like them. Thanks for watching and see you soon. Bye bye.